Hey kids, it's me, Mr. Bill, and I hope you're ready to have fun today, because we're all going camping! Yay!
Ready to set up the camp, Mr. Bill?
Oh no!
Help me put up the tent, Mr. Bill. Here, you hold the tent stake while I hammer it into the ground.
Okay, but be careful! Oh no!
Now that the tent is up, Mr. Bill, it's time to make a campfire.
Oh boy, we can roast marshmallows! Oh boy, something smells good! Oh wait, no, the fire's getting too big! Oh wait, no! Oh no! No!
Like, hypothetically, if I were a space alien, and this is hypothetical, how would you
sure?
just? It's hypothetical in air quotes.
Okay.
How would you describe a typical Mr. Bill episode?
Well, I started the first one. It was going to be a surprise, so I kind of based it off like a parody of a kids show with a host, and welcome to the show, and then everything terrible starts happening. But I wanted to prolong the before I started torturing him, and so that's why I invented Spot, his dogs. I figured I'd do something to the dog first, just delay it a little bit, because once you start dismantling Mr. Bill, you gotta kind of go the whole distance, and then so basically as a theme, we're gonna do something today. We're gonna go to the circus. We're gonna build a house. We're all these, and it became a formula. I didn't really intend to do more than the first one, but they said, "You have any more of these?" Oh, sure. And then I made another one, and then before you know it, I got on staff eventually.
That is the voice of Walter Williams. He is the creator of Mr. Bill. Mr. Bill is one of the most iconic characters in the history of Saturday Night Live. And you've tuned into another episode of Comedy History 101, where we school you in comedy. I am Harmon. Hello. And yes, during Mr. Bill's heyday, he was voted the most beloved character on Saturday Night Live, right behind John Belushi and Gilda Radner. And we will be talking today with Walter about the history of Mr. Bill. But before we jump into the episode, a few quick plugs. On June 18th, 7 p.m. at Fred's Doghouse, I wrote a play. It's called The Roast of Graham Parsons, which is a collaboration with some musicians from Skinny Dennis, if you happen to know that venue here in Brooklyn. And on June 19th, 7 p.m. at Young Ethel's, I'll be presenting That 80s Improv Challenge. Yes, 3 improv teams compete by creating scenes based on obscure videos from the 1980s. And it's a very special pro wrestling edition. Yes, all the teams will be creating scenes based on pro wrestling videos from the 1980s. And on June 26th, 7 p.m. at the Players Theater in the Village, I'll be presenting AI versus Human Roast Battle. Come out and see a human rapper take on a machine learning AI in a comedy roast battle of tomorrow. Yes, rapper Human BS will be taking on, this month, AI Jesus in a comedy roast battle. And finally, on June 27th, 7 p.m. at the Red Room in the Lower East Side, I'll be presenting Tale, NYC's finest storytelling. No hokey gimmicks, no dumb themes. Tale brings you the best in New York storytelling. And you can find out all about my show dates on my site, harmonleon.com, or on the social medias at Harmon Leon. Also, take some time to like, subscribe, and comment on Comedy History 101, wherever you get your podcast, or on our site, Comedy History 101, or on the social medias at Comedy His 101. Every star, comment, subscription keeps us going and shows your love for such great episodes as this. And now, without further ado,
everybody so stupid.
I'm trying to use the phone! Excuse me!
Comedy History 101. So basically when Mr. Bill first got submitted to SNL, it was just sort of an open call. I saw a clip with Dan Aykroyd just kind of announcing pay to play or play no pay.
Yeah, we'll play no pay.
About home movies, you send them in, we'll play them. No pay, just play. The home movie this week is by Walter Williams.
I did that for a few years too. In fact, I never really got paid until I got on staff on the 4th season. But the first 3 seasons, actually, the first Mr. Bill was on the very first season, and I was in New Orleans doing I had a comedy show, like a little live presentation of films and skits and all this stuff. And Saturday Night Live came on, and someone said, "Hey, they have this home movie contest." So I sent a reel of my films and my Super 8s, and they picked Mr. Bill out the reel. And I called them, "Hey, did you get my reel of films?" "Yeah, we're gonna put it on this week." I said, "Wow!" And of course, it was a Mardi Gras weekend in New Orleans, and they actually preempted Saturday Night Live for the Mardi Gras parade. But I knew that in advance. So, but I was able to go to the studio, and I saw the feed, and it was on. And no one believed me the next week. "Yeah, you're just saying that because it wasn't on." So they finally reran the show, and then they believed me.
Yeah. So just in your hometown, they preempted it.
In New Orleans for the Mardi Gras parade. Yeah, it's pretty big down there. Mardi Gras. SNL wasn't at the time. It was picking up, it was popular, but yes, I got to be there at the studio feed, and that was very exciting. I haven't really watched primetime TV since Green Acres. Actually,
it's a classic fish out of water story.
Yeah, it kind of influenced Eddie Albert on Green Acres. Is just surrounded by everyone torturing him, and it's kind of a Mr. Bill type character.
Any other influences on Mr. Bill other than Green Acres? And
probably maybe the Kennedy assassination, the threat of World War III, Mr. Bingle, who was kind of a local in New Orleans, a local character. But it's all cutesy. He never got hurt or anything. But so we'll take that. He deserves. People won't mind if he gets roughed up because he was just too cute,
Could you?
I just got the idea from the bad animation, and after that, it's just about trying to come up with a joke, that works.
Well, Mr. Bill, it's been a long day. Time to bunk down for the night.
Boy, I could really use a good night's sleep.
Here, Mr. Bill, I'll zip you in.
Wait, you're just gonna be mean to me.
And I had no meaning in it. There's no message. People have analyzed it, told me that is that supposed to mean this, and I just trying to make it funny, and they kept asking me for more. So that was my goal.
And what else was on your reel that you submitted, or was it just Mr. Bill?
They were all comedy shorts. Mr. Bill was the only bad animation joke skit. Now the others were like Sky Devils of World War II. It was the joke was loose lips sink ships. I have wax lips and they drop and a little boat sinks. So I was using props and things, and I did the modern football, the MFL, the Modern Football League, and I did Timex. It was like a Timex commercial, but they get a homeless person and he swallows the watch and they beat him up. And now this is dating. No one will know what Timex commercials were, but that kind of stuff. Little skits, but all in Super 8 film style. And Mr. Bill, though, was the only one like the bad animation. And the fact it was just like the animation's so bad you can see the hands moving the thing around. And then I said, maybe the hands could drop the character. And before you know it, I was at Woolworth's buying Play-Doh.
And you said, where were you at in life? Were you said was this part of like a live comedy show that you're doing that you would also show movies, or? That's
right. And some of the films were actually like an external. I had a couple of actors and friends who were there, but some of the film pieces were like coming into a building or something, and then from there entering the stage. So sometimes part film setup and part live. And but then some were just like Mr. Bill. I showed that I had that in the can. In fact, I shot all those films like in 1973. So this is 50 years ago, I believe. But I sent them out to Los Angeles to get film stripe put on it in order to do the audio, and they were lost in the mail. I called the lab. Did you get the films? No. I called next week. Did you get the? No. You post office doesn't know anything. So literally months went by, and I assumed all the films I had made were gone. And then one day, I look out the window and I see a UPS truck show up and comes out with a box, and it was the films and the strike films and everything. There was a miscommunication, I guess, and then I added the audio. So I guess that was in 1974 when I finally got the films back, added the audio. So I guess Mr. Bill was really finished in 1974 was the first complete film. But yeah, fortunately I didn't have an aptitude for anything back then, so I went into comedy and I had a friend. I worked on a movie that my sister was dating this guy who was doing his own feature film in New Orleans, and so I got to work on it, and that kind of showed me the whole how films are shot out of sequence. And some days, you shoot something and then edit to something he shot a year later, and then I kind of that was my training in film. And then he actually loaned me the Super 8 film that I filmed the Mr. Bill and the others on, and so so I was a teenager and nothing better to do. I had no real backup plan, so off to New York eventually.
Yeah, so you were a teenager at the time you submitted
Excuse me?
film? You were a teenager at the time you submitted the film?
That's right.
SNL?
Yep.
And it was Vance DeGeneres. Was he in your comedy troupe, or how did you know him?
Yeah, he was in some of the films. He played Mr. Hands in the first film. Everyone I knew was my sister, everyone was in the films, so it was I was a night watchman at the time, actually. And so I'd write and edit my films at night and then shoot in the day, and it just like I kind of really got on a whirlwind.
Like, hypothetically, if I were a space alien, and this is hypothetical, how would you
sure?
just, it's hypothetical in air quotes.
Okay.
How would you describe a typical Mr. Bill episode?
Well, he starts off. I started the first one. It was going to be a surprise, so it was. I kind of based it off like a parody of a kids show with a host, and welcome to the show, and then everything terrible starts happening. But I wanted to prolong the before I started torturing him, and so that's why I invented Spot, his dogs. I figured I'd do something to the dog first, just delay it a little bit, because once you start dismantling Mr. Bill, you gotta kind of go the whole distance, and then so basically as a theme, we're gonna do something today. We're gonna go to the circus. We're gonna build a house. We're all these, and it became a formula. I didn't really intend to do more than the first one, but they said, "You have any more of these?" Oh, sure. And then I made another one, and then before you know it, I got on staff eventually.
You're stupid. Everybody's so stupid.
What was like the reaction? Was it like an immediate reaction after that first time it got shown?
Oh yeah. Well, it started off. I did see the feed at the studio, and it started off as like this kind of corny, badly made film. You could hear the groans in the audience, like, "Oh, this is really." But as soon as Spot got squished, big laugh, and then from then on to the end of the film, it was like it sounded like a kind of a laugh riot. It still took a couple of years to get on staff, but I kept making them and submitting them. In that little disclaimer, at least because of the no pay, we'll play no pay. I was able to hold on to the ownership. So when I got on staff, I was able to keep control of the films and the character, all that kind of stuff.
And then so the second one came out at the end of the first season. It was like kind of bookending the first season.
I think it may have been the second season. I'd have to check my notes. No, the second season, yeah.
And
then I had a couple on the third season. Mr. Bill goes to the circus, and Mr. Bill pays his taxes. And that's when I finally got a meeting with Lorne and Lorne Michaels, and he says, "I want you next year. I want you to make 10 of these." I said, "Can you trust me to do that?" And he said, "No, but if it works, you'll be a hero, and I'll be a hero." So we shook hands, and he kind of just let me go with it. He said, "I want to read the scripts first and afterwards. Just do it. I don't know how you do it. Just do it. And if it doesn't work out, I'll cut it after dress rehearsal." But they all got on.
And was that the typical writing process in the early days? Or was it kind of really, you had to go through the hoops that you have to go through today to get it like a sketch on?
Yeah. Well, I actually got a staff writing job that fourth season too. When I finally got an official contract to do the Mr. Bills, I said, Lauren, I write all this other stuff too. So he invited me to participate writing the commercial parodies that they're done before the season starts. Since they're filmed, they're kind of the first things that get done. So I wrote I wrote a skit. It was called Elvis Presley's Coat. It was just a coat in concert.
The New Jersey Civic Coliseum is proud to present, appearing live for a limited engagement, Elvis Presley's Coat. Hear the hits of the king and see the coat that made him famous.
And so he gave me the writing position too. So I had suddenly 2 jobs. I'd never had any. I'd never been paid before to do it. So and then all of a sudden I got 2 different jobs. So the staff writing job, a whole different deal. You go there on Monday night, and the writers are in Lorne's office, and he goes around one by one in order. And what are you working on? And then you tell him some ideas, and then he'll say, "Yeah, this and that, I like that." And then you go, the ones he liked, that you'd start working on it, and then it turned into all-nighters on Tuesday nights, and then Wednesday read through. They'd read just your script, and the ones he liked get put. But that part was long. Whereas the Mr. Bill, I'd go home, go back to my place, and just do it, and he'd see it in the dress rehearsal, and he'd have the choice then. But as I say, they all wound up getting on.
So every single one got on, or did
Every
you learn?
single one.
And what was the typical writing process for Mr. Bill? What's kind of like the nuts and bolts under the hood?
Yeah, well, I actually wrote pretty much the whole first season once I got the job. But generally, before I would make it one at a time. I come up with a premise, and then just kind of flush out the formula. So you got Mr. Bill, and you've got Sluggo, and then Mr. Hands. And so Mr. Hands basically follows the authorities' order, like who's Sluggo. So if he's Dr. Sluggo, Dr. Sluggo says, "Well, that leg's going to have to be removed." And he's not supposed to be mean to Mr. Bill. But as the seasons went on, though, I started developing the storyline where he's suspicious that Mr. Hands is actually not his friend. And then he tries to run away, but there's no getting away. So in fact, that 5th season was all about leaving and starting his own show, but Mr. Hands always still shows up. A premise, and then coming up with gags, and the setup and payoffs. That was mainly as many jokes as I could get in, based around kind of a theme like going to the circus or something.
What was your home set like for filming?
Wherever I could brush off and clear a space, it was the first one was on a piano bench, and then it was all different places, but I had a little stage and styrofoam, and it's not very pretty, like if you get behind, it's not pretty. I was trying to do the best I could. People thought I was trying to do this artistic, style. In fact, when I've done commercials since, or films, they all want me to purposely shake the camera. I said, no, I just had a cheap tripod. I wasn't trying to make it bad. And I'm not going to make it bad now. I always try to do the best I can. So they actually got a little better quality through the years.
And what was on the early ones, your production budget?
My production budget, the first one was, let's see, the Play-Doh Super 8 photo mat. It was about $10. And then eventually, once I got on staff, it was more like $1,500. I was able to get a little bit of help, an assistant, and build a few props. And stuff like that. I actually met somebody through Ann Beats. I was doing a book, and the art director, Jim Wilson, he and I connected, and he's spectacular props builder. And so when the props started looking good, that was when Jim Wilson started building them.
And how did you celebrate, like the first time when you found out it was going to be on Saturday Night Live? Or was Saturday Night Live in the lexicon, or was it still gaining?
Oh yeah,
momentum?
yeah, it was already really big. I couldn't believe it. I really never, I can't really remember celebrating ever. It was always like, now what? It's like I got to keep. And once I got the opportunity from Lorne, I got, this is it. Everything all energy goes to making these things work, And then I had the staff writing job, which, it was, and then the show ended, or at least we all left, and then it was like, whoa, what happened? It's like it was never a moment where I could sit and I can remember, but it was great. I mean, it was I learned a lot about filmmaking, and I get to make a film and then be in the audience and see how things went over, and I could learn from that, and then try to adjust things on the next shows, and learning the basics of filmmaking, because it's all single camera filmmaking. People thought Mr. Bill's animated or he's there live. In fact, when Blondie was on the show, they wanted to be on Mr. Bill's set when he did his show, because they knew it was going to be on, and they didn't realize it was all like a made up Super 8 film, and his lips don't move, nothing moves. He's just, in fact, I have one right here. It was one of his stunt doubles. Of course, Mr. Bill didn't do his own stunts.
Yeah.
And, so that's one of the
very cool.
Not one of the early ones I did in Play-Doh. I switched to Sculpey 3, so it still has the look of it, but it didn't fall apart when I was shooting it. Like Play-Doh is a total pain.
So all the early ones were in Play-Doh, and then you switched to like stunt double Bill and all that?
But all the Saturday Night Lives are Play-Doh. That's right. It was. I was like, I'd freeze them before the shoot, because to try to keep them from just crumbling and falling. It was. People have tried Mr. Bill's before, and then they realize what a pain this is. Right? But it was fun. As I say, I had no aptitude for anything else. So.
And how would you describe those early days of SNL? Was it just sort of like, did it feel like the rules were still being written, or do you think it was?
No, I tell you, when I got there on staff, which was the 4th season, the first 3 seasons I would be submitting the films, and so I'd kind of run into a few of the people outside the show, but when I got there on the 4th season, it seemed pretty organized. In fact, it's kind of difficult to break in with writing, because everyone had their own little writing partners and all this. But yeah, Lorne was there. He'd be there all night. I mean, he was really there. It wasn't like he was phoning it in or anything. I assume he's still like that, but I'm amazed he can do it. I have trouble staying up watching it, much less doing it. Right?
Yeah. And how did it go from like, just doing it on your own to suddenly being like in the writer's room? And what was that writer's room like?
Well, the writer's room, there really wasn't a writer's room. Everyone had offices. So like Franken and Davis had an office, and then some people would team up and go to somebody else's office to write something. But the Monday night meeting was the meeting for the writers, and in Lorne's office. And then, as I said, he'd go around one by one and ask what you're working on. And then you're off on your own, or you go work with somebody, or I pretty much was on my own, because I really didn't know what was. I probably actually made mistakes too. Like, excuse me. Like, I remember my first writers meeting. At the end of it, Lorne said, and I'd like another E-Buzz Miller. Remember E-Buzz? It was an ongoing character, very funny, that Danny Aykroyd did. And I didn't know that he was talking to the writers of E-Buzz Miller. I just thought he was telling all the writers E-Buzz Miller. So I wrote an E-Buzz Miller, not knowing. And then when it was read, I got kind of strange feedback. And then I realized I was stepping on someone else's character, and didn't know it, so there were a lot of rules that I didn't know about, and I was like 19, 20 years old. So I was like, it didn't really. I mean, anyway, I did the best I could to fit in, but
Yeah.
I'm sure I've made a lot of mistakes. So.
And how did it feel when like Mr. Bill was rated like right up there with Belushi and Gilda as the most beloved character on
As I
Saturday Night
say,
Live?
it was great, but I had to get on to the next one. I said, I got to keep doing this. I got 10 of them. I mean, there was really never a time to kind of relax for a while, which is good. I mean, I really decided I got to put everything into this. Nothing else really matters at that point because I didn't really have a backup plan. I wasn't. It was a little too late to start med school and stuff like that. So I figured I better make this work. But it was exciting when because people, part of the appeal I think was people didn't know if it would be on or not, including myself, because it was like the insurance policy. If the show is running late, it'd be easier to cut a film than show it the next week, rather than striking a set and all that kind of stuff. So it said there was a mystery to it. It would be on at the end of the show if it would be on. And when it would come on, I'd be in the studio. Man, the place would light up. The studio would go crazy. And once after they kind of knew it was coming, or they knew who it was, and it was exciting. I mean, I can't. I mean, but once again, it was over, and it was like, what happened, But it was good. He was at his height too when Lorne decided to call it quits, and so that's kind of good actually. There's a lot of good memories. So after that, I said, let me just keep those good memories in people's mind by not doing anything bad to ruin it, But like every once in a while, an opportunity comes up that makes sense, and I'll go buy some more Play-Doh. Right?
Yeah. And so was that a bit nerve-wracking to have it on at the end and maybe it would get cut? I think it was a circumstance with Andy Kaufman maybe going too long.
Oh yeah, that was painful. That was because it was the Christmas special. It was a Christmas show, and I decided I'd like to do a Mr. Bill Christmas special, but I knew if it were cut, that would be it. He couldn't play the Christmas special the next week, So I told Lorne about it, and so Lorne, we put it on if I make this Christmas special, and he said, yes, do it. You'll be definitely on the show, and I put a lot of work into it too. It was really one of the more elaborate things I'd done. And that night, Andy Kaufman was on wrestling the women. He had a little period where he was wrestling women, but he kind of went on and on wrestling. He was really into it, but he went like 5-10 minutes longer. It just went on and on. And I'm sitting in the room and I hear over the PA system, Mr. Bill Christmas cut, oh geez. So I just kind of like, and it didn't make it. I read later in some book that Lorne went and confronted Andy Kaufman and his manager and said about going long, and he said Lorne told him I had to cut Mr. Bill, and it says Andy Kaufman and his manager burst out in laughter, like as if they cared. But yeah, it was nerve-wracking. In fact, when I got on staff, I wrote a skit called Lorne and Walter. And I was going to be on, and I keep kind of pestering Lorne. He's behind the scenes in the show. You think it's going to make the thing? Because my mom would really like to see it, and she's in intensive care, and they usually have to bring her down to the TV room and unplug her for a while. And so if you think, I'll let you know later, Walter. And but that didn't get on the show. He at the end of the read through, he says Walter and Lorne, we'll practice this upstairs, and then. But he didn't take it seriously.
Did you get along with Andy Kaufman, or was it just kind of like in passing?
I met him. I love Andy Kaufman, by the way.
Yeah.
When I moved to New York after I got the film on, I knew I was going to go to New York or LA. I realized if I'm going to do a career, I can't do it in New Orleans. It's got to be LA or New York. And when I got that first film, I said, okay, it's going to be New York. And then I went there and I did stand up at the Improv, and at that time it was very competitive. They had Eddie Murphy, Joe Piscopo, Gilbert Gottfried, and Andy Kaufman, all the big big people. So I rarely got on. And one night, Andy came in, and I decided to introduce myself and say, "Hey, I'm Walter Williams. I do the Mr. Bill." He just looked at me with the crazy wide eyes and it's like totally in character. And like, and then I was supposed to get on early that night, like around 11:45. And the place was full still. I was like, wow, I'm going to have an audience. I'm going to get on. But then after I talked to Andy, he goes and gets up on stage. And I'm going, oh no. And he does a skit about drinking chocolate milk, and the waitress brings it to him. And he drinks it and stirs, and he gets in a sleeping bag and goes to sleep on the stage. And everyone's kind of yelling at him, come on. And then people just all, one by one, they just all left. But he was determined to stay in that sleeping bag until every single person left the club, which they did. And then I was up next, and there was like nobody there. So, but I love Andy Kaufman.
Yeah, and I think it was mentioned you also wrote a sketch with the Rolling Stones.
Well, I didn't write it, but I was in it was a skit that they were already doing called Dave Mabel's Ex-Police or something like that. Supposedly it's ex-police, and they're like vigilantes, and they go break up crimes, you know. So anyway, I was one of the Dave Mabel's ex-cops, and so my job was to go up to Keith Richards and pin him against the wall with a bayonet, you know. And he was smoking a cigarette. He was laughing his ass off because I did it so well. He was impressed, and but that skit was cut. But that was my first show actually on staff writing, was when the Rolling Stones were the host, and so that was quite a jaded start to things. But I actually hung out with them a little bit, Keith Richards, and in fact, there's a picture of Lorne yelling at Belushi in the writer's room, and Keith, all the Rolling Stones are sitting around, and Lorne was yelling at him to why he stayed out all night with Keith Richards partying the night before the show. But there's a picture of that. I'm sitting in the background and laughing my ass off, and Lorne's all pissed. And I'll send you that picture. But it's pretty funny.
And did you get along with Belushi very well?
Oh yeah, Belushi was the greatest. I mean, he was, and he really liked Mr. Bill. In fact, he liked the Elvis's coat, and Lorne showed it to him in his office, and he just fell on his knees, and he was really very, very supportive and nice. And there'd be another party after the official party at his house, and he'd invite me over, and that's where I met or hung out with Keith Richards a little bit. But he was just great. He was the best. He's still my favorite of all. A sweet guy, but obviously he had too much talent. You know, a lot of those guys. But that was a shock.
Yeah, and with writers, was there ever any? You know, there's like a lot of rivalry. Was there ever any like animosity at the success of Mr. Bill amongst anyone on the staff?
I kind of found out later. I didn't really have time to pay attention to too much. I was like a Mr. Magoo going from one place to the other. But they did maybe a 30th anniversary, and then I think it was Lorraine said, people were like, "Why do you keep doing this, Lorne? Why do you keep making this Mr. Bill?" Because everyone's, I don't know. I didn't know anything about any of that. So, but evidently Lorne saw the response, and the Mr. Bill got a lot of fan letters, and I still got boxes of them. The nice thing, they're all written to Mr. Bill, and not to the guy who makes Mr. Bill. Which was an important thing to me, to keep it. Mr. Bill exists, and it's his show. In fact, Belushi told me, "You better put your name on that, because you're going to get ripped off." And but anyway, I kept it like that, and I try to keep him as a living creature that's, you know, off on vacation or something.
I'm trying to use the phone.
And how did Mr. Bill evolve from start to finish in the just SNL years?
Yeah, mainly when Lorne said he wanted like 10 films, that was the 4th season. Then I did another 10 the 5th season. I knew I didn't want to just keep doing the same skit, you know, like go through the motions. So he needed an arc, a life path to go on a journey, just so I could kind of move the story and the character along. So he he got his house burned down in one, so he had to. Well, first he tried to run away. He's hitchhiking. Once he's kind of suspicious that Mr. Hands isn't his best friend, he tries. And of course, Mr. Hands picks him up hitchhiking, and then he's going to do his all new Mr. Bill show in the fifth season without Mr. Hands and none of those people. But then he shows up, of course, and then he stays home. His house burns down. Then he's in a trailer park building a new house, and then he's on Skid Row and he has to see a psychiatrist. So I tried to give it a big overall story. And at the end of the last show that we all did together, which was the end of the fifth season, he wound up in prison. So a happy ending. Leavenworth for life.
And what do you think Lorne kind of contributed to the evolution? Was it just like his notes, or just giving you the freedom to do what you wanted?
Yeah, it was he really, as I say, I mean, I'm pretty spoiled to have like a producer, someone just tell you to do your thing and not interfere. I don't mind people contributing, but I mean, I generally don't have time to just do it the one way I'm thinking of, much less. But really giving me the freedom and the long term made me think of I got to evolve a story into this rather than just keep doing the same skit each time. That would have run out. Some of the skit, I'm not gonna. So some of the skits had a tradition of just repeating the same things each time, and which is okay, but then it kind of runs out of steam. So I wanted that kind of real life. Actually, my cousins, their house had burned down and they were living in a trailer park, and it really did give me kind of an influence. So I'm taking things from around me and actually making it up as I go. I still do.
And where, like, say, 100 years from now, where would you like to say Mr. Bill's place is in comedy history?
I don't know. I never really thought about that. Just I just like the idea that I'm able to do something and give people enjoyment. I mean, that's the most gratifying of all. And they don't know my face. They don't know. I'm not like a celebrity that brings this joy to people, but they all want more, and they can recognize the person. And whereas I don't really talk about it, and most people wouldn't guess. So I really don't know. But he's still got good. He's got a lot of fans who they still have fond memories, and that was really one of my goals. Was after Saturday Night Live, I knew I never really necessarily have an audience that big where everyone stayed home and saw it. So I just wanted to preserve the good times, the good feelings from the past, and if something came up and a project that sounded like it would add to that, I'll take it. And if not, I'm happy just to kind of let people remember it, because if you do something kind of bad, they figure, oh, I was on drugs back then. It really wasn't funny. So I can't really answer that really about where he's gonna. But so far, it's been a long time since I've really done much, and people still seem to like him.
Yeah, and so that was a time when like the writers would also have like be in sketches a lot. Like, weren't
Right.
you on the very last episode as here's the new cast?
I was yeah. Lorne is a brilliant guy, by the way, because he decides to end the show and clears out the whole, cleared everybody out, and it was pretty smart. And he came back later, but so it's the last show we were all going to do together. He had already announced that we were the fifth season was it. Buck Henry was he hosted every first and last show of each season. And he came out and said, well, you may have heard that NBC is letting the staff go, that they're going to let us all go. But don't worry, because we're going to replace them with a crack, new, fresh, young comics trained by, I think, some comedian like from his comedy camp. And so they brought us out, and I was one of the new cast members supposedly for the next season. Gary Lipton, and had a little tuxedo T-shirt on. And so Buck Henry says, not only is is Gary Lipton a fine comedian, but he's also quite a musician. And my line is, yeah, I can get a sound out of 60 different instruments. And then he was supposed to have another line. in dress rehearsal, and he had another line to that. So I say, and yeah, I can get a sound out of 60 instruments, and I'm waiting for the next line, which had been cut, and no one told me that line was cut, and I'm standing there, and then okay, so like my reaction was like it was all spontaneous. Whatever you saw in that tape. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, he's not answering me. I'm on stage, I'm waiting. So I just go, and then kind of shake my hands and go off and got a laugh, just like, but because people thought I was waiting for a response from getting a sound out of 60 different instruments.
Walter, it was really great talking to you. I really appreciate your time. And I
Thank
love
you.
the stories. And yeah, it was just really great to meet you.
Well, anytime, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you very much.
All
and
right.
take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And that wraps up our episode today on the history of Mr. Bill. Once again, quick plugs. June 18th, 7 p.m. The Roast of Graham Parsons at Fred's Doghouse. June 19th, 7 p.m. Young Ethel's That 80s Improv Challenge Pro Wrestling Edition. June 26th, 7 p.m. at the Players Theater, AI versus Human Roast Battle. And on June 27th, 7 p.m. at the Red Room, Tale, NYC's finest storytelling. No hokey gimmicks, no dumb themes. Tale brings you the best in New York storytelling. And you can find out all about my show dates on my site, harmonleon.com, or on the social medias at Harmon Leon. Also, remember to like, subscribe, comment on Comedy History 101, wherever you get your podcasts. Show some love, show your support, because we enjoy bringing you such great episodes, such as the one we delivered to you today. And now, until next time, bye-bye.
You're stupid. Everybody's so stupid.
I'm trying to use the phone! Excuse me!
Comedy History 101.